Welcome to the Randy Report. I'm Randy Slavacek, your host. I'm also the writer and editor of therandyreport.com, where you can find me every single day on the internet reporting on the daily news cycle in terms of politics, pop culture, and entertainment news of interest to the LGBTQ community and its allies. In this week's headlines, the Trump administration plans to eliminate services for LGBTQ youth who call 988, the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline. Disgraced former Congressman George Santos has been sentenced to 87 months in prison for wire fraud and identity theft. The new movie, On Swift Horses, follows two queer characters searching for love and belonging in mid-century America. All that and more in this episode of The Randy Report. The federal government plans to eliminate services for LGBTQ youth who call 988, the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline, according to a Health and Human Services budget draft leaked last week. The budget cuts would go into effect in October if approved by Congress. Since the hotline's launch in 2022, callers have been able to speak with counselors trained to work with specific at-risk populations, including LGBTQ youth, who are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. The Service for LGBTQ Youth has received 1.3 million calls, texts, or chats since 2022. In February, the program received an average of 2,100 contacts per day. Mental health experts say that trained counselors provide key cultural competency to LGBTQ youth, understanding the stress caused by recent political attacks and the ways in which the youth often face lack of family support and harassment. The Trevor Project, one of the handful of organizations that make up the LGBTQ youth subnetwork, responds to about half of 988's calls and texts from LGBTQ youth. This year, the subnetwork received an estimated $50 million in federal funding. Jansen Wu, a director at the Trevor Project, said in a statement, "I worry that LGBTQ young people will reach out to 988 and not receive a compassionate and welcoming voice on the other end, and that will only deepen their crisis." Disgraced former Congressman George Santos, the first out gay Republican elected to Congress, has been sentenced to 87 months in prison after pleading guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft in August 2024. In December 2023, Santos became just the 6th person in U.S. history to be expelled from Congress after a House Ethics Committee report that found he spent campaign funds on rent, designer bags, Botox treatments, and OnlyFans subscriptions. In December 2024, Santos launched Pants on Fire with George Santos, a weekly gossip podcast. Prosecutors said the podcast is a perfect crystallization of his lack of genuine contrition and his tone-deaf efforts to continue turning lies into dollars. Santos had also monetized his celebrity on Cameo. Prosecutors reported he made more than $400,000 on the platform. In a letter to the court, the infamous serial liar insisted he has accepted full responsibility for his money-grabbing schemes, saying he remains profoundly sorry for his crimes, but called the 7-year prison sentence overly harsh. He added, "I am responsible, but saying I'm sorry doesn't require me to sit quietly while these prosecutors try to drop an anvil on my head." In a filing last week, prosecutors argued that Santos remains unrepentant and has not shown genuine remorse. They cited a series of social media posts in which he disparaged the U.S. Department of Justice as a cabal of pedophiles and cast himself as a victim of prosecutorial overreach writing. Santos has reverted to form and approaches sentencing with belligerence and an insatiable appetite for likes, blaming his situation on everyone except himself. Santos's lawyers had requested a lighter 2-year prison stint. I've covered Santos's countless lies here many times. Among his many grifts, Santos ran a fraudulent political consulting firm, Redstone Strategies LLC, falsely presenting it as a registered super PAC. Prosecutors say Santos used Redstone to launder donor money, keep commissions, and fund personal expenses. In one scheme, he used an elderly woman's credit card, initially provided for a one-time donation, to charge $12,000 through Redstone's merchant account. He wired the money directly into his personal bank account. Another victim had their credit card charged at least 5 times in March 2022, totaling more than $30,000 in fake campaign contributions, including some attributed to Santos's uncle and people who didn't exist. In addition to prison time, he's been ordered to pay more than $373,000 in restitution. He has until July 25th to report to prison. The Trump administration has asked the Supreme Court to reinstate its ban on transgender military service members just days after Justice Department attorneys faced sharp skepticism from a federal appeals court panel. In an emergency filing, the Department of Justice asked the High Court to lift a nationwide injunction issued by Washington State U.S. District Judge Benjamin Settle in the court case Schilling versus United States. The government claims that allowing transgender people with gender dysphoria to serve would impact military effectiveness and increase healthcare costs. But lower court judges found that the government spends far more on erectile dysfunction medications annually than it has for gender-affirming care in 10 years. Judge Settle ruled that the policy likely violates the Fifth Amendment's equal protection guarantee and called it dramatic and facially unfair, citing a lack of evidence that transgender troops harm military readiness. Issuing his injunction, Judge Settle also noted that the Trump administration has offered no explanation as to why trans military service members, who have been able to serve openly over the past 4 years with no evidence of problems, should suddenly be banned. This comes just 2 days after Justice Department attorneys had a tough time defending a parallel case, Talbot versus United States, to a D.C. Circuit panel. Justice Department Attorney Jason Mannion was at a loss when asked if such automatic discharges exist for other conditions. Noting the policy's contradictions, which only allows people diagnosed with gender dysphoria to serve if they've never transitioned, Judge Cornelia Pillard asked Mannion, "You can serve as a transgender person as long as you don't serve as a transgender person?" D.C. District Judge Anna Reyes, who issued the Talbot injunction, called the trans ban soaked in animus and dripping with pretext. The gorgeous period piece romance On Swift Horses is off to the races, following 2 star-crossed souls searching for love and belonging in mid-century America. Near the end of the Korean War, aimless veteran Julius, played by Jacob Elordi, returns home to Kansas, where he makes a curious connection with his brother Lee's new fiancée Muriel, played by Daisy Edgar Jones, which sets them both down parallel paths in life. On Swift Horses splits its time between the dual narratives of Julius and Muriel. As Muriel and Lee move out to San Diego, Julius chooses to live his life on the road. He's got a knack for card counting and ekes by off of his winnings. He makes his way to Las Vegas, where he puts his poker know-how to good use, working for a high-end casino where he looks for cheaters from above through 2-way mirrors. There, he meets Henry, played by Diego Calva, who shows him the ropes and then the town, and eventually charms his way into Julius's bed. It soon becomes clear they're really into each other and aren't afraid to explore it in a series of intimate scenes. They eventually go into business together, using their poker skills to cheat at local gaming halls. It won't surprise you that things do go awry. Meanwhile, Muriel has moved into a small apartment in San Diego with her husband Lee, where both find jobs so they can save up money for a home and presumably start a family, all in pursuit of the American dream. While waiting tables at a diner, Muriel overhears locals gossip about betting at the nearby racetrack, where she hits a lucky streak, giving her the thrill she's so desperately been seeking. Her winnings lead to buying a house in a comfortable neighborhood, and it's there that she meets a friendly neighbor, Sandra. One night, when Muriel shows up at Sandra's door, she's surprised to find a gathering of women there. They say they're part of a social book club, but we know what's really going on. It's then that Muriel finally gives in to her unspoken desires, becoming intimate with Sandra for the first time. In the end, all of the film's plot lines and themes poignantly converge at the Chester Hotel in San Diego, a secret hangout for gay men and women. It's through the Chester Hotel that On Swift Horses makes the case for its story as a vital piece of LGBTQ history in America. At a time when we were forced to live on the margins and in the shadows, queer people still managed to find ways to connect and communicate with our tribe, to let one another know there was someone out there thinking of them. I really enjoyed the film, and I highly recommend it. On Swift Horses is playing in theaters everywhere now. And that brings me to the end of this episode of The Randy Report. If you enjoy catching up on LGBTQ news in a quick podcast, I'd appreciate it if you'd share it with your friends and hit that subscribe button. I like to think of The Randy Report as the 60 minutes of gay news, only shorter. And remember, you can find me every single day on the internet at therandyreport.com, where I cover the daily news cycle in terms of politics, pop culture, and entertainment news of interest to the LGBTQ community and its allies. Thanks for listening, folks. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.